We are born into a story, and we live inside that story, and one day the story ends. But beneath every story, beneath every name, memory, and identity, there is a deeper question. What continues when the story ends? Modern physics tells us something unexpected. The universe is not made of things, it is made of fields. Particles are not objects, they are excitations of fields. Matter is not primary, structure is, and the same may be true of consciousness. We often assume the brain creates consciousness. But what if the brain does something different, not generating awareness, but shaping and stabilizing it into a point of view? What if the brain localizes consciousness? Like a lens localizes light. Before thoughts, before memories, there is someone observing, learning, and becoming aware. Reality doesn't change when we look at it. Reality is not waiting in a formless state until an observer appears. It is always in the process of forming, dynamically, continuously, and relationally. Our observation does not create reality from nothing. It participates in how reality becomes structured, localized, and defined. In other words, reality is not passive. Observation is not a magic switch. Both are part of a continuous shaping process. This aligns with physics. Systems evolve, fields interact, and structures emerge, whether or not a human is watching. Observation simply selects and localizes one expression of an already active field. The ancient Greeks have left a whole legacy behind them about all of this. Many philosophers pondered about the beginning and subsequently the end of life and beyond. Yet the most extraordinary clues were woven into their language itself. Ancient Greek is structured with such depth and intelligence that one can expand endlessly within it, never losing orientation, always finding the way back to the origin. And within this language, something truly remarkable is revealed. The word Thea means goddess, but stressed differently, it means a place of viewing, a vantage point. And Theos, often translated as God, is not merely a supernatural being, but a field of reality that inherently contains a point of view. Theos is not simply power, it is a field event that includes a localized observer. Thea, in turn, is the act and position of observation itself. Thus, the 12 Olympian gods were not merely deities, but the 12 primary vantage points of a stable, structured, manifested field, analogous to the dodecahedron, which stood at the center of ancient Greek cosmology as the symbol of the universe itself. Later, philosophers associated this form with the fifth element, ether, understood as the substance of the celestial spheres. Greek gods were ways reality becomes visible when observed from particular positions. At the boundary where visibility ends and form gives way to the unseen, death was never understood by the ancient Greeks as annihilation. Hades, Hades, the unseen, was not a realm of punishment, nor a subterranean abyss as portrayed in later versions of Greek myths. It was a non-local domain, a condition beyond spatial coordinates and linear time, where awareness persists without bodily confinement. It was not a place, but a state, one in which consciousness was no longer localized. Mortals became immortal there, not by endless biological duration, but by release from spatial and temporal limitation. Immortality, in the ancient sense, is not endless time. It is freedom from locality. The Greek word for death is thanatos, and it does not signify an end, but apolysis, release. The observer is freed from the body, the brain, and the narrative. Thanatos releases the psyche from embodiment. The mortal observer becomes no longer embodied, no longer localized in biological form, no longer subject to decay, yet still existent. Thus, Thanatos delocalizes awareness and relocates it into the non-visible domain, Hades, where it persists without bodily limitation. Presence remains. Therefore, death is not destruction, it is release. Consider this. When a constrained system is released from its constraints, it transitions into a new phase state. Death is precisely this, the removal of the biological boundary conditions that localized awareness into a stable embodied form. Like a river leaving its riverbed and returning to the sea, the water does not vanish, it simply ceases to be confined. So too, the observer ceases to be bound to a single vantage point. Like a shooting star, the soul does not disappear. It returns to the sky from which it came. Like I said before, most of us live inside a story. This story gives us coherence, continuity, and meaning. But the ancient Greeks offer another key through their myths. They spoke of Psyche, the principle of life, the animating field, the awareness within every living being. And they spoke of Eros, whom Hesiod places among the primordial forces. Eros, the force of attraction, coherence, binding and union, the force that binds particles, the force that organizes chaos into form, the force that allows Psyche to cohere rather than disperse. In the myth, Psyche becomes immortal only when she unites with Eros. This is not romance, it is structure. Psyche represents organized consciousness. Eros represents relational coherence and binding force. When consciousness becomes relational rather than isolated, it is no longer fragile. It does not endure through persistence, it endures through coherence. In modern terms, Eros is the force that stabilizes awareness. Without Eros, patterns dissolve, consciousness decoheres, and identity fades. With Eros, awareness continues even after the body collapses. In physics, this is like a field interaction that preserves structure. In myth, it is why Psyche becomes immortal when united with Eros. It is the mathematics of survival, not of memory, but of coherence. People who enter sleep, dreaming, meditation, near-death experiences, and altered states describe something consistent. No body, no identity, no timeline, no narrative, but never no awareness. The stage remains lit even when the actors leave. Science today speaks in the language of fields, information, dynamics, coherence, relations. From this perspective, consciousness does not require a body to exist, it requires organized coherence. The brain is a localizer. Death is a delocalizer. Nothing is destroyed, only the constraints change. If what continues is not your story, but your presence, then presence exists now, beneath your story. You are not your past, you are not your role, you are not your identity. You are the one who has a story, not the story itself. And this realization softens fear, loosens attachment, deepens compassion, and expands meaning. One day, your story will end, your roles will fall away, your name will be spoken for the last time. Your body will rest. This presentation does not ask you to believe in anything about what comes next. It asks something simpler and more radical. Right now, without memory, without identity, without story, is there awareness? If the answer is yes, then something real exists that is not bound to the story. And if something exists now without the story, then the most honest, grounded, and hopeful question we can ask is, what continues when the story ends? And what future technologies will cross the boundaries of death?